All right, part two, song versus song, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. Today we are going to do 616 in LA versus The Heart Part 6. Now these are, of course, the two name switch records. I think they're the two most underrated records as well, due to circumstances and when they were released and all that. We'll get into that. So, of course, the criteria, we're going to go over it again. If this is your first time watching, I'm comparing each song 4 to 4 as they match up as far as stylistically, I would say is the best way I'm doing this. So we go by beat, the flow and style that they used on the record, the angle and the accuracy of the angle that they took as far as dissing each other, the lyrics, of course, lyrical content, the timing of the record, when the record was released. This is important in this battle. And the marketing of the record, that's the title and all that, how they released the record, the cover art, all that. So let's get into it. Let's start with the beat of each record. Now, 616 in LA was more of a soulful. It's the Al Green sample, of course. And we have The Heart Part 6, which is also kind of a sample, but it's more of a darker, I would say, battle type beat. So as far as the beat, The Heart Part 6 gets a 5 from me. I love that beat. That beat is awesome. I love the sample at the beginning. Let me see you prove it. That goes into the marketing part, but I love The Heart Part 6 beat. 616 in LA was a dope beat as well. I love that beat. Soulful beat, Al Green sample, all that. But at the same time, I'm gonna just give it a 4.5. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I like The Heart Part 6 beat a little bit better than I liked 616 in LA. So Drake actually wins that category. Let's go to the next, flow and style. I'm gonna get through this as quickly as possible. Now, for me, even though the better performance for me was on 616 in LA, they both were top notch. I'm gonna give them both a 5 for the flow and the style of how they came off on the record. Both flows were impeccable to me on both records. Now, flow has nothing to do with lyrics and what was said. This is just how they sat in the beat, how they flowed on the beat, how they sat in the pockets, how they changed up pockets, especially Kendrick with the singing and the different parts, the way he kind of weaved that together. I think they both get a 5 from me on flow and style on both of these records. Now, angle and accuracy. Now, to me, 616 in LA, the angle was more accurate because the accusations that Kendrick were making was very they were right in our face. We could see because it was current. It was what was happening at the time. The academics accusations, the addressing of the tactics that Drake used. All of that was on point. Now, on The Heart Part 6, Drake was basically playing defense the whole time. He did throw a couple jabs in there, but the Whitney thing is still unproven. So I gotta only give him a 4 on that, especially because he was just playing defense. I gotta give Kendrick a 5. So 616 in LA gets a 5 in the angle accuracy. The Heart Part 6 gets a 4. Now, lyrics. This is the most controversial part of this video because technically, from a technical standpoint, from a rapping standpoint, The Heart Part 6 is a 5. And it's probably the best lyrical performance Drake had in this battle. I mean, it's close between that and Family Matters. But the problem is, do I take away from the lyrics because of the lack of accuracy in the angle? And the Drake just didn't land. He had some bars that didn't make sense. Let's just call it for what it is. And in listening to it, it wasn't the angle that he took, because the angle was the same. It was the way the lyrics were constructed, and they just didn't make sense. They weren't cohesive enough. So I'm gonna have to give him a 4 on the lyrics when they should have been a 5. And 616 in LA for me, this is Kendrick's lowest lyrical content track, so I'm gonna give him a 4.5. So let's go on the timing which the records were released. Now, 616 in LA is probably the best timed release track on this. The timing was impeccable. I know people are gonna say meet the grams, but 616 in LA, because of the actual time, has to do with the angle and the marketing and the meaning of the track, and it has so many meanings, I have to give it to 616 in LA. So that's definitely a 5 for the timing. And the Heart Part 6 gets a 1. This was the worst time track in the history of battle rap. Drake released, this was just the worst timing. I don't know, he rushed it out, they panicked, and they just felt they had to get something out, and that was not the case. This gets a 1. This is what killed this, which is a very good diss record. This is a very good record. And the timing and the releasing of the timing is what killed it. So it has to get a 1. I'm sorry. Now, the marketing of each record. Now, of course, 616 in LA, it's another 5. It's another 5. All of the meanings, releasing it in the morning, it was a back-to-back type situation. It was a warning type situation. All of that just fit perfectly. The Heart Part 6, the marketing is great. I'm gonna try to separate the title, Drake being the sixth god, taking the Heart series from Kendrick, doing what Kendrick basically did to him. That all gives it credit. I'm gonna try to separate it from when they released it, right? Let Me See You Prove It, all of that, talking about the allegations, that all fit into the Heart Part 6 brand from Kendrick. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I'm gonna try to separate it from them releasing it at the wrong time. So 4.5. Of course, 616 in LA gets a 5. For a final score of 29 out of 30 for 616 in LA and 23.5 out of 30 for the Heart Part 6. This would have been a much closer battle in comparison if they had released the Heart Part 6. I just think a week later. I think Drake should have took his time and stacked up a few tracks like Kendrick did and came back in that way. This would have hit a lot harder, especially if they corrected the errors in the bars that didn't make Drake's story make sense. Again, to me, that had to do more with the timing than it did with the lyrics. So with that being the final score, let's go to the polls. And the poll shows that 616 in LA gets 85% of the votes. Now, it was almost 2,500 votes, 2,500 votes. Now, keep in mind, I only have 3,000 subscribers on this channel thus far. So that's a lot of votes, and it's a landslide again in Kendrick's favor. Unfortunately, these polls are not going well for Drake. Drake fans, you all are misrepresenting, or you're just telling the truth. Let's call it for what it is. At the end of the day, Kendrick in the first round of this battle came out swinging, and I believe won quite handily. But let me know what you think in the comments below of the comparison, the scores, all that. Give your opinion on how you score it. And thank you for watching. As always, Professor Lex Beats, Bar Breakdown, Lyrics Explained. We out.